All right, everybody, welcome into Concrete Jungle New York Baseball Podcast, coming to you guys live from the FingerLakes1.com studios, third floor North Park building in Seneca Falls. I'm Paul Russo. Next to me, as always, Kyle Evans. Behind the scene, manning the controls, as always, Nate Sharman. Boys, happy Monday. Hopefully it's a good weekend for everybody. I know for sure at least two or three of us here were moving at a bit of a slower clip today, but it's understandable. But Kyle, good weekend for you, I'm assuming. I know you're a bit on the chipper side, I'd say, coming in this morning.
Yeah, hell of a weekend. One of the best weekends in a while. Some may wonder why. Just because of the sports that I saw on TV. I love that sweep that the Braves got.
Whew. Okay, brutal. Nate, you survived the weekend. Good to see. Much like myself, anyway. I went to you too quick there.
Survive is a good term, Paul.
Yeah.
Good time on the golf course on Saturday with Josh, and hung out with some other friends along the other weekend. So re-energized for a new week here at FingerLakes1.com, and pretty excited for it.
Yeah.
As always.
I would say I'm re-energized, but yeah, when the weekend starts off with your first beer being a Modelo Negra, you're in for a potential long weekend like myself. So. Not going to complain. It was great.
Yeah, I was going to say, you live a tough life, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Mexican twice on Friday was rough as well in the aftermathic way. But yeah, Yankees and Mets both lost their series in different fashions. Both have, I wouldn't say the best storylines here coming into the week. But, that being said, you have to discuss them no matter what, and obviously, our minor league teams are done, so there's nothing really to discuss with them. We'll have. I'm trying to decide the best way to kind of go about it, and I think we'll maybe talk amongst us, as a group. But we'll kind of decide maybe in a way what to really, I guess, maybe do in a way for these. Maybe once everything gets wrapped up for the season, maybe have a dedicated podcast per each team, but. We'll see. I think we'll play it by ear a little bit. But let's jump right into the Mets. They had a bit of the rougher weekend for sure between the two New York teams. Pretty much worst case scenario happened for them over the weekend. Swept by the Braves in Atlanta. Technically Cobb County, as I like doing it. So Friday was a 5-2 loss. Max Fried picked up the victory, moves to 14-7 on the year, a 2.48 ERA. Jacob deGrom took the loss, 5-4, 3.08 ERA, and Kenley Jensen picked up his then 38th save on the year for the Mets. Not a ton of super positives, but Eduardo Escobar continues his pretty good past couple weeks, 2 for 3, a double and a walk. Thomas Nido picked up a solo home run, going 1 for 3 on the day, and Jeff McNeil went 2 for 4. With a run scored. Bit of, I guess, a precursor really to the whole weekend was that Friday night game. Pitching, we'll touch more on the pitching aspect of it because I know some people was like, oh, it's the worst outing of the year, and I think maybe it was the worst outings given the timing of the year. I didn't think pitching was necessarily all that bad collectively, but, the offense had a couple guys really doing good work, just nothing collectively went right.
Yeah, and after that series opener, it was frustrating you lost, but at the same time, it wasn't the end of the world because all you needed to do was win one of the next two, and you thought, with the Scherzer going Saturday, you'd be able to, get that done, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, obviously you tee it up, 4-2 loss on Saturday. Kyle Wright picked up his 21st win on the year, 21-5. ERA of 3.19. Max Scherzer, you mentioned, took the loss, 11-5 now on the year, 2.29 ERA. And then Kenley Jensen picked up his then 39th save on the year. McNeil continued his good pretty much series. He's pretty much the only name consistently that will pop up in positive terms here throughout the weekend. 2 for 4 with an RBI. Francisco Lindor went 2 for 4, and Brandon Nimmo went 2 for 4 with a run score. So again, a little bit of the same type of deal Saturday as it was on Saturday as it was on Friday. Scherzer, again, maybe not the best outing, maybe not the worst per se, but certainly the offense. You had a couple guys really step up. Again, mentioned McNeil, but a couple guys having multiple games just couldn't get anything really going.
Yeah, and if you look at the box score, Atlanta really didn't have that many hits. They relied on the long ball, and that's what wins you games. In the new age of baseball, the home runs are everything, and we know that from the Yankees. And Matt Olson homered, last night again for 4 straight games. I mean, when guys like that are on a hot streak, it's tough to beat a lineup that just keeps homering.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and the Braves have been an interesting kind of, I don't know about case study per se this year, but certainly coming out of the gates, had a bit of a, World Series hangover, to put it bluntly. And then, throughout the year, and this is something that we're actually going to touch on actually kind of with the Mets a little bit, just in the Braves case with injury, whenever you kind of have different guys kind of stepping up in different ways, getting the call up, and stuff like that. And they made some positive moves that have really paid dividends as of late. Like a guy like Robbie Grossman, who post-trade deadline coming over from Detroit, maybe not the best stuff initially, but certainly through September has proved to be a really good bat, especially off the bench in certain spots. So,
and Dansby Swanson's been incredible. Michael Harris, since he was called up, just a difference maker.
Yeah, and the Harris we'll touch on a little bit more here. Like I said, I think it's going to provide some interesting commentary here in a couple minutes. Then last night, obviously completing the sweep 5-3 Atlanta victory. Dylan Lee picked up the win out of the bullpen, 5-1 at 2.15 ERA for him. Chris Bassett, the loss, 15-9, a 3.42 ERA, and then Kenley Jensen picked up save number 40 on the year. Pretty crazy for him. He's had a nice little renaissance here. Daniel Vogelbach, 2 for 2 with a home run, 2-run shot for him. Jeff McNeil, 3 for 5, a solo home run, and then Pete Alonso went 1 for 3, a walk and a run scored. So, again, not a ton to really look at. Bassett didn't even see the end of the third inning. Got rocked pretty good. And then, for the Mets, they banged the door a couple of different times throughout the game, at least last night. Just couldn't get it quite open. And the story really of the series, it's not like they were really out of the games per se. It just kind of seemed like when they did have momentum, it got stifled pretty quick, and they just couldn't dig themselves out of it in that sense. And that does happen with baseball especially, but when you kind of get in those mental spots sometimes, it just turns into real head-scratcher and head-down moments.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of shocking to say, but the Mets bullpen wasn't the reason at all they lost any of these games. I mean, Scherzer, deGrom, and Bassett combined to allow 11 of the 14 runs. That means the bullpen only allowed 3 runs over 3 games. I mean, that's pretty good. It was the starters, and that's kind of, I guess, alarming because those are the guys you're going to be using in a postseason series.
Yeah.
And if they struggled on a big stage on the road, how is that going to happen in the postseason?
Yeah, and it kind of puts them now a bit behind the 8 ball here, going into these final 3 days, final 3 games. You're not going to have more than likely your I guess really quote unquote big 2 for sure, and Scherzer or deGrom going. We'll touch more on that obviously here in just a couple minutes when we preview and take a look at the final series here beginning today against the Nationals. But now they're behind the 8 ball. 2 games back of the Braves. Braves really only need to win tonight, and they lock it up. But this is where I think we could really have this discussion of was this scenario, what happened over the weekend, the worst outings of the year for deGrom and Scherzer, maybe to a degree Bassett, or is it just kind of like just bad timing across the board for it? Because to me, I kind of look at it as maybe it's just kind of like worst case scenario bad timing of it, because we've seen Max have rougher outings, we've seen deGrom have rougher outings, and we've certainly, I think, have seen Bassett have rougher outings this year. Maybe distance-wise, it was probably the worst for Bassett this year. But to me anyway, we've seen him have worse outings for all 3. I think it was just the timing of it is going to certainly left a bad taste in your mouth leaving Atlanta, and probably will leave a bad taste in your mouth going through what more than likely will be obviously the final regular season series, but what more likely will be, the Friday game for the wild card coming up.
Yeah, I definitely think it was the timing because those are your two best pitchers, and they didn't perform on a big stage where you really needed them, at least one of them to perform. I mean, like I said, going into that series, you needed literally one win in 3 games, and they couldn't do it. Like, I think that's where Met fans and a lot of the people that are, are across the world talking about it today kind of, mention that, they got to get a better performance from their two best pitchers.
I do think, and I don't necessarily disagree, I think a lot of it too is just, I think maybe bottled up panic in a way. Like Mets fans, and I don't mean this as a knock, but Mets fans have a tendency to kind of do, I guess, doomsday scenario type stuff in a way. And I mean, I they're the Mets, right? We joke about them being a meme in a way, like the LOL Mets and stuff like that, but this year's different. And I think a lot of the stuff is panicking. I mean, you look at the guy that sticks out to me as always with this kind of like Frank the Tank in a way. And it's just, you really, like, realistically, do these people really think that the team moving forward is going to be 60 and 102 and then 50 and 112 or whatever the hell it is the next couple of years? Like, come on. It's not, this isn't the end of the world, right? I mean, this is the first time that you've had a cohesive clubhouse with the amount of talent that these guys have had on your team, in all fairness, since probably the late 90s/2000, that, you are in a good spot to go forward. They've been collectively the more consistent team in New York all year. They've been probably consistently the better team in New York all year collectively, in all fairness. This isn't the end of the world. What's happened? I trust me, I'd much rather you win the series, or at least you get 1 or 2 in Atlanta where it's one game and then anything's kind of possible the final 3 days of the year. But stuff like this happens from time to time, especially when you're still, to be fair, in this building phase of your future of the organization.
Yeah, but I also think a lot of that has to do with the big lead that they had. I mean, if they didn't have such a big lead, I don't think this kind of reaction would be that big of a deal. But, I mean, a lot of people are buying in on this Mets team. I mean, they could still make a really good run. But if they don't win the division, it's kind of like upsetting because of how big the lead is. And because they needed just, I keep saying it, but one win in Atlanta. And you would think with their two best pitchers going that you could get that.
Yeah.
And that just didn't happen. And, I mean, not winning division, like you said, it's not a big deal. I guess not that big of a deal. But it's still a little bit of a big deal because then you wouldn't have to play, a best of 3. And I looking at the numbers, they do struggle when they go to San Diego.
And to be fair, like I've said, all year, both on air and off air, I mean, you want to win the division, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world that this is year one of a. You have to look at it. This is year one of really a 5-year window with the Mets, give or take. Maybe not quite that long for certain players, right? I mean, I doubt. Max Scherzer is going to be there in 2027, right? That's not how Father Time works in that scenario, right? But I mean, a guy like maybe say Blake Snell could be there in 2027, right? A guy like Carlos Rodon might be there in 2027, where it's maybe certainly not on the Snell side of things. I'd say more on the Rodon side of things. It's a equal to equal comparison here. But, you have guys who you're going to come in and continue this process that guys like Scherzer started in this scenario.
Yeah, there definitely is a bright future ahead. I totally get what you're saying. I don't think coming into the year that we even expected them to be right there like this. We thought the Mets were going to be good, but I don't think we thought they were going to be like a 100-win team.
Right.
So they are, I think, above expectations for most people. But I think that division lead, blowing that lead, is really why it's such a big deal right now.
Yeah, so this is going to be a two-parter here. Obviously, Friday, Francisco Alvarez gets formally called up to the Mets. Baseball's top prospect, Mets' top prospect, obviously. And it ended up kind of sparking a bit of a marginal debate, I guess, in a way. And kudos to our own Josh Durso here over at FL1 for kind of bringing this to attention. A bit of the proactive versus reactive call-ups in a way. The Braves you bring up, obviously Michael Harris, but the Braves are a prime example of this year where Michael Harris Jr. gets called up one of their top prospects. Another one of their top prospects, Vaughn Grissom, gets called up. And obviously there have been guys along the way, too, for the Rays that have kind of been called up. And same with the Mets, right? Not to forget about guys like Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos at one point as well, still up, obviously. But it's an interesting discussion point here, the proactive versus reactive call-ups. And I think a point that might be a little bit missed upon some Met fans is, right, the only reason why Michael Harris got called up was because Adam Duvall gets hurt. And at the time, Acuna was not progressing the way that they thought he was in rehab. The only reason why Vaughn Grissom gets called up is because Ozzie Albies goes down for the year. And not to say, right, that that's necessarily proactive, but at the time, especially with the Michael Harris one, I mean, Vaughn Grissom was post-trade deadline, but, you know, the Michael Harris was well pre-deadline that they could have gone out and have traded to get really a plethora of guys available at that any given time there. I mean, they were linked with Jock Peterson a little bit again. You look through a couple other different guys, right? I mean, the Cubs had guys available that they could have gone after, so on and so forth. So, I guess in that sense, maybe they're not so much reactive as they were proactive, right? Give these young guys a shot, see what happens. Obviously, no matter what, 2023, you probably do get Michael Harris in that outfield next year, no matter what. But Harris had never seen AAA. He came right from AA to the big leagues. So it's an interesting, I guess, case study in a sense, right? With the Mets, do you see any difference if you call up Alvarez sometime in August? Beatty a little bit earlier, Ventos a little bit earlier. I don't know. Personally speaking, in my mind, there was no sense to call them up in a way. There just was no room for them at any given point. Maybe there were a couple injuries along the way. I mean, you look at the month of June and July catching-wise for the Mets, and it was an unhealthy disaster, right? McCann's out with an oblique issue. Nito's out with, I believe it was the broken, I can't remember, finger or whatever it was, but and then also got COVID pretty much right after that. So they had opportunities to maybe give guys a run, but they opted to go with, in my mind, a safe route at the time with Patrick Mazeika, who is veteran enough that can handle a staff. And sure, maybe you can make a case there that maybe Alvarez can at least come up and get some run. But to me, at least throughout the year, I don't know if calling up any one of the three guys I mentioned, right, would have made a difference.
Yeah, obviously, I think Alvarez is only up because of Darren Ruffin on the injured list.
Right.
And when he was healthy, he was struggling. Because obviously we've seen Alvarez at pretty much DH. But I think we will see him behind the plate over the next couple nights. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think they would have made too much of a difference. I never understood the Darren Ruff's trade. I didn't like that.
Well, that one, I think, was just the balance act of acquiring Vogelbach.
Because you look at the numbers and it's like, I mean, did you expect the guy to come and rake? I mean, they were like he was struggling. I mean, like that was kind of expected. Mm-hmm. And if he was going to continue to struggle, I guess maybe you could have called Alvarez up sooner, but I think that they really just didn't want to bring him up, but because of injury, they had to.
Yeah.
I do think they wanted him to get more AAA experience. Right. And I know it's a limited amount of at-bats he's had, but in the games he has played, yeah, he's looks a little lost.
And I know some people might say, right, Alvarez is 20, but Michael Harris is also 20. Vaughn Grissom's 20. That's all fine and well, but Alvarez is a catcher, right? Harris is an outfielder. Grissom's a middle infielder. I don't want to make it sound like they're any less of a person or player than Alvarez is. They aren't. But the fact of the matter is, when you're a 20-year-old catcher, your collective time in the minors has been a quick stop in St. Lucie, a quick stop in Brooklyn, and a quick stop in Binghamton before getting called up to Syracuse in July. Like, personally speaking, as a baseball guy, I wouldn't have called them up either, though. Like, not to say they couldn't possibly handle a full-fledged rotation, but you have the rotation that the Mets have had all year. You look at it from the consistent standpoint of things, right? Scherzer, deGrom, Walker, Carrasco, and Bassett. That's a tough five to overall handle, in all honesty, that some veteran guys might not even be able to handle, let alone a 20-year-old.
If Syracuse doesn't miss the playoffs, though, they don't call him up.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I don't know, because I don't know who else they would have called up to replace Ruff as for DH at bats.
Right. I mean, you could make a case that you may go Dom Smith, but that's another lefty.
They wouldn't have messed. I don't think they would have messed with Francisco's development, though.
That's the thing. I do think they wanted Alvarez to start off fresh next year.
Right.
But they were like,
Right.
damn it, we have to make this move.
They
I think
kind of got their hands forced, right?
Well, the main issue with the playoff scenario is if the Mets did that, they're the only team who really gives a damn about that. I mean, the Rays plucked a couple different guys up from Durham, and Durham just won the AAA championship last night. The one guy, Mastroianni or whatever you pronounce it. There have been a couple of other guys too, and vice versa. I think they sent Pinto down, but either way, if that was the case, I think the Mets would be the only team willingly showing that they're doing that on purpose. Then at that point, I don't know. I mean, I'd be with you, but the way the minor leagues have changed now over the course of the past 15 years is just so completely different from that logical point of thinking that I don't see it.
Yeah, because I remember seeing in August several reports saying that Vientos wasn't going to be called up, Alvarez, and then look, they kind of had to do it because of injuries.
Right. And then obviously the Vientos one, right? It's more injury than not, but the other part about it too, right, is they call up Alvarez. It's going to make more sense to do him than say a guy like, again, this is the part that sucks because he's another lefty, but say Travis Jankowski,
That's the
he's
thing,
he's a decent contact bat, but you already have your speed guy in Terrence Gore.
too many lefties in the lineup.
I mean, the only righty you could call up might be Jake Mangum, and even then, he's another example of he's been quick through the system that I don't know really where you kind of stand on that. And then at that point, he's just another outfielder at that point compared to we should have another catcher on the roster if you need to stick a guy back there.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion, right? I mean, I think, we don't, as much as we do discuss the minors in and of themselves, right, team-wise, we don't talk about the player movements as much as maybe we should every now and then. It's an interesting part, right? I mean, and I don't think there's a right way or wrong way to kind of go about things in nature in regards to what the Mets have done or the Braves or any other big league team this year has done.
And I don't think he probably expected it either.
No.
And then he gets thrown in a big series, and he wants to produce for his team, and that's why I know it's such a small sample size, but last night even he kind of looked lost at the plate, swinging at stuff that wasn't in the zone.
Right. And it will be tough, right? Because no matter what, he'll be sent to the they're still using the alternate trading sites for postseason. I believe the Mets are rolling with Brooklyn for theirs. I know the Yankees are using Somerset because that's just the closest for them at this point. But and look, there will be guys at Brooklyn as well that they're just there to be there and keep working, right? But Alvarez isn't postseason eligible, so he'll just be doing stuff there. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, they got last game was Wednesday for him. Obviously, Friday's a short turnaround, but you get done with the season. Your mind does kind of switch to more of a training mode than an actual gameplay mode, where you're just kind of working on getting yourself better and stuff like that. That I don't maybe know necessarily that he had it switched yet, but who knows? I mean, I know when I was playing, I got to the final game of the year, whether that had been in regular season or postseason play. If I knew that was the final game and that was it, usually couple hours or so after the game had been over, my mind does shift into off-season mode.
Yep.
Whether it be training or, at the time maybe going to whatever sport was next in line. All right, so the Mets, mentioned them, big series with the Nationals. With 2 games back of the Braves, right? The Braves, if they win tonight, they lock it up. But, if you're the Mets, I really do think no matter what, you have to go into each of these games thinking your season's on the line kind of in a way, at least. Have that mentality,
especially tonight.
Forward. Yeah. So tonight, 7-10 on SNY. Corey Abbott, 0-4, a 5.11 ERA at the big league level this year. Goes against Cookie Carrasco, 15-7, a 3.95 ERA. Tuesday night, 7-10 on SNY. Paulo Espino, 0-8, a 4.30 ERA in the year against Taiwan Walker, 12-5, a 3.59 ERA. And then Wednesday, 4:10 first pitch on SNY, the regular season finale. Eric Fetty goes for Washington, 6-12, a 5.27 ERA against TBA. So this is the interesting spot. Don't know who will throw there. I think a lot of it depends pretty much what happens the first 2 games of the series, specifically tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta wins tonight and locks up the division. I wouldn't in the least be surprised to see Taijuan Walker get scratched and they just go some sort of combination of Dave Peterson, Trevor Williams. Maybe they go back to the Jose Buto something along those lines.
Imagine if the Braves do lose the first 2 and the Mets do win their first 2.
But that's
that's a huge game.
But that's what I'm talking about, where I think you need to go into tonight's game, especially obviously season's on the line.
Yeah, I think take it one day at a time, though.
Yeah. And this is something we did talk about a little bit off air. You know, it's the Nationals. I mean, you got to have these. I know that they do have our boy, Joey's his bombs Meneses, and Josh hits singles Palacios.
Yeah, and they've gave the Mets trouble this year.
Yeah, but exactly. I mean, they've been scrappy with the Mets all year. I wish I could outright say sweep, but I think a lot of it does just depend on tonight. Like, if Atlanta wins tonight, I wouldn't be surprised to see you kind of have some guys, maybe Buck gives them a day or extra day's rest, so I don't know. For the sake of it, I do think they at least still take 2 of 3, so I'll go 2 of 3.
I think their energy's down. I think they're really bothered by this. I say they only won 1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, I don't know if their energies will necessarily be down, but it's going to be interesting because we are going to talk a little bit more about the mental side of things here with the Yankees, specifically Aaron Judge at this point. But, yeah, I mean, if they come out and maybe even somewhere along the line, because I think for the most part, every game tonight, at least in this whatever time zone you're in, the next few days, they're starting at the same time specifically for the reason of not manipulating or anything like that.
Yeah, so they're going to be glancing up at the scoreboard.
But that's what the point I'm getting is if it's 9:30 or so, right, and the Mets you're still playing, but you look up and you see Atlanta's up 3-9 with 2 outs in the 9th, and Jansen's out there. I'm not to say you check out, but that mentality might change. And
I guess it's a good thing they're home, though.
Right, yeah. And that's a positive, right? I think, if they were on the road in Washington, not to say I don't think it might make that big a difference. I think the 7 line would probably travel pretty well down to D.C., but I'd still think you'd much rather be home in this scenario than on the road.
Yeah.
So let's transition over to the Yankees, albeit they did lose the series to Baltimore 1-2. I'd say the vibes are a little bit better than what happened with the Mets over the weekend. Obviously, the Yankees clinched everything. They're locked into the 2 seed in the AL.
Yeah, it was just a weird series because nothing really meant anything besides Judge. Yeah.
And I think a little bit, and I don't know, I'll defer to you a little bit here as well as we get a little bit going. To me, it kind of seemed like they were kind of messing around a little bit per se. I wouldn't say they're trying new things necessarily, but, it like you said, it kind of seemed gas a little bit off. The foot was a little bit off the gas pedal. Friday night was a 2-1 Baltimore win. Jordan Lyles picked up the win for Baltimore. Who's at 12-11, a 4.42 ERA. Not to go off topic here, but some of you guys for Baltimore have really had some renaissance here. So there will be interesting pieces, I think, in the free agent market.
Yeah, him and Kyle Bradish.
Yeah.
I think they shut out the Astros last week, back
to
back.
I was about to say, Jordan Lyles, I mean, he's pretty much been living off of 1-year contracts the past 3 or 4 years, and this is a year that, he might get you a 2-year type deal. So Domingo Germán picks up the loss 2-4, a 3.31 ERA, and DL Hall, while the Orioles normally starting prospect pitchers actually picked up the save. Germán went 5 1/3, 3 hits, 2 earned, and 6 Ks. Arguably, he's building up quite the impressive resume here towards the end of the season. Swallow Cabrera went 2 for 4 with a solo home run, and then Isaiah Kiner Falefa 1 for 3 with a stolen bag. So, again, it was collectively, you had to go to, obviously, appearances by Germán, Cabrera, and IKF even, but, collectively, again, just not anything going really in that game.
Yeah, I think Germán's throwing the ball pretty well. He definitely has a spot in the bullpen. And I like that. He can maybe go 1, or not maybe go 1, but definitely go 1, maybe go 2. And that's kind of nice to have a guy that's built up.
I'd argue he could probably go 3 innings.
Yeah, it just seems like when he finally gets through a lineup twice, he kind of...
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saturday, a much more positive note, right? 8-0 Yankee victory. Nestor Cortez picks up the win, 12-4 now on the year at 2.44 ERA. Austin Voth picked up the loss, 5-4, a 4.34 ERA. Cortez 7 1/3 inning of one hit ball, 12 Ks for him. Kyle Higashioka picks up a solo home run on his way to being 3 for 4 on the day, and Josh Donaldson 2 for 2, a double, a walk, 2 RBIs, and a run scored. Cortez pretty much trying to solidify that spot in the postseason rotation, which I think he'll get anyway. I think it always helps having a lefty in there, no matter what, whether it be probably the 3-hole for him, but what will presumably be his final regular season start on the year certainly ends it on a punctuation type way.
Yeah, that was a really impressive performance. I just love watching him pitch, especially some of his windups and stuff. Sometimes he quick pitches, and but yeah, it's a hell of a year, hell of a story with him, and I can't wait for his first postseason appearance.
Yep, proud of Hialeah. And then yesterday on Sunday, a 3-1 Baltimore victory. Logan Gillespie picks up the win out of the bullpen, 1-0, a 3.24 ERA. Aroldis Chapman 3-4 on the year now, taking the loss, a 4.58 ERA. Dylan Tate picks up the save, his 5th on the year. Harrison Bader went 1 for 4 with a double. G.J. LeMahieu went 1 for 3 with the walk. And then do shout out here in a weird way. Chichi Gonzalez got the spot start. No decision, 4 2/3, 4 hits, and a run, 3 walks, and 3 Ks. So Chichi certainly his best start all year. He's been on 4 different teams. This was a guy that in the gambling sphere, there's a few of us always watching to make sure wherever he started we would be betting against him. But did more than enough to keep the Yankees in it while he was there. And who knows, maybe prove to give some team a shot on him going into spring training next year.
Yeah, and I think he was probably excited to get the call up, just to pitch for the Yankees. That's cool, even in a game that doesn't mean anything. But yeah, he did well. He kept him in the game. That was good to see. Hopefully he goes somewhere and does well too.
Yeah. Can we name, besides the Yankees, the 3 other teams that Chichi's pitched for this year?
I believe it's the Rockies.
That was one.
I'm not really sure about the other 2.
Okay. Nate, any guesses over there?
No.
I guess Nationals.
Okay, we have a Nationals guess, which is wrong. It's all right, though. We'd be looking for the Minnesota Twins and the Milwaukee Brewers.
Ooh. I was thinking he would pitch for terrible teams.
Well,
Brewers, I guess aren't terrible.
Colorado's not great, but,
I thought Washington, 103 or 104 loss team, whatever they are.
they're tough. Yeah. But Chichi, remember that a couple years ago when Chichi was really good? We certainly, as I would say, live in a society. So, all right. Let's talk about a couple different things here. I want to touch on Judge. He's still at 61. His tracker now sits at 62 on the year. And although he's been handling it well, I do believe the pressure and the mental game are kind of starting to get to him a little bit here down the stretch, trying to get to 62 and break the tie with Roger Maris.
Well, since we last were doing our podcast, he has struck out a lot more than he was doing. I think I do agree with you, but I also do think that he's not expecting him to pitch to him, and then when he gets pitches, he's behind.
And to be fair, a lot of pitchers have been avoiding him.
Yep. It seems like it's mixed. The one guy will go after him, another will, and then so he just doesn't know are they going to go after him or not, and he kind of guesses.
Right.
And then he seems like he is trying to pull the ball sometimes, and I don't know. His average has dropped a little bit. I don't know about the Triple Crown.
Right he's at 311. Luis Ariz has not. He played one of 3 games over the weekend for Minnesota, so his average is still at 314.
But either way, I know we're talking about this, and obviously the home run record's a big deal, and the Triple Crown. But look at the numbers; they're just insanely good.
Yeah, he's in line for the quadruple crown. Should he get the opportunity to do that?
So even if he doesn't do it, it's kind of disappointing. But at the same time, let's not just be worried about that. He's a hell of a player.
Right. No, I think the reason I bring it up, I think it's just been an underrated part in this that it was well documented with Maris, right? The fact that the toll of this was getting to him so bad that he was losing hair at one point, right? And Judge has really maintained a really good, like I said, on the outside, kind of not showing, I think, the toll. But I do think part of it has gotten to him a little bit.
And again, I do think going back on the road will help
Yeah.
him. I actually do think he will get it done in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly agree. The Texas ballpark is not per se hitter friendly, but it can be pretty hitter friendly. It's not as hitter friendly as the old ballpark at Arlington, but Globe Life, especially if the roof gets closed, it kind of helps out a little bit. So I do agree. I still think he gets a 61. I remember talking with some people last Thursday night. I thought he'd get to maybe 64, but obviously that was under the impression that he'd at least get a couple or one against Baltimore. So who knows? Do need to make some notes here. The Yankee bullpen did get dinged up over the weekend a little bit health-wise. Clay Holmes shut down for the rest of the regular season, dealing with some shoulder stuff. It got brought up a little bit, obviously, right? That was kind of what put him on the IL there for a little bit. So,
And then he said rotator cuff in his press conference. So
so it's not ideal. I think it might be a little bit of one in the same type potentially, but I'm not sure if you said it or I can't remember who, but somebody brought up the fact he might be getting a cortisone shot if he hasn't already.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He did. Thursday he did.
Yeah, so obviously not ideal there. And then obviously over the weekend with Ron Marinaccio, been dealing with what sounds to be a bit of a chronic shin issue potentially.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. I don't know about Clay Holmes because shoulder is a tricky situation, especially it can mess with your command and all that.
So this isn't good. I think the positive here is a guy like Efros who can kind of handle whether you need him to do the outright close work or handle the high pressure situation, especially excuse me, that we may not be seeing Chapman at all now in the postseason. It kind of sounds like yesterday's appearance might be the last we see him in pinstripes. But
Yeah, it should be.
I just think going into the postseason, this is not a good spot for the bullpen to be in right now.
Yeah, I do look at a guy though like Jonathan Loizica. I think he's an under the radar guy.
Yeah.
Yes, he struggles at times, but when he's on, he's really good.
Yeah.
So I think him and Efros will kind of switch the closer's role. But the bullpen is a little concerning. Miguel Castro will be back today. I'm not sure if we will see Alberto Brave again.
And, I forgot to mention, but, Britain as well over the weekend going down.
Yeah, that's tough. But I don't know. I kind of still think it was a tough shot for him to make it, even if he was still healthy.
Right.
Because when he was pitching, he wasn't doing too well. I also wonder, will Greg Weissert be back up in the next few games, or at least? So, yeah, the bullpen's definitely a little concerning.
Yeah, I know we dunked on a guy like Lucas Luetke a little bit, but really to be fair, he's a good safe piece that you can have in the bullpen.
Yeah, Wandy Peralta should be back for the ALDS. But yeah, I don't know. The bullpen's gonna be interesting to really watch and see what they're gonna decide to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Westert's not available for the postseason roster.
So maybe just in the final few games in Texas we'll see him. But other than that, yeah.
But look, and this is where a guy like maybe Herman kind of comes into a bigger role than we think in that bullpen.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll just use Herman like an inning, but they just keep pushing him back to back to back.
Right.
Because he's kind of stretched out and can do that. So maybe he'll be available like a lot.
Right. And that's where I hope maybe if you get in a spot where you can just need a guy to eat innings in the postseason, those games happen every now and then, that he can go out and just go 3 innings, face everybody through the order one time and get them out.
And it's going to be huge for the starting pitching to give them distance. I mean, Cole cannot do what he did in Boston last year.
Right. And I think, that's a big thing, too. I think it's a very big positive seeing Nestor go 7 1/3 over the weekend. Tyone's done really well down the stretch. Rarely did he get pulled in the 5th or after the 5th. His last start, he did go full-fledged, 7 innings.
Yeah, Cortez and Tyone seem like they're very pitch efficient, where Cole, he gets those long at bats, a lot of foul balls, and that's what kind of brings him up. And that's kind of why you see him, 100 pitches in the 6th inning.
Right. So hopefully everything will work out there for the Yankees. Mentioned they're in Texas to wrap up the regular season. 4 games in 3 days. Monday tonight, 7:05 first pitch on Yes. Luis Severino, 6-3, a 3.41 ERA, goes against Martin Perez, 12-7, a 2.93 ERA. Doubleheader tomorrow on Tuesday. Game 1's at 2:05 on Yes. Jameson Tyone gets the nod there, 14-5, a 3.83 ERA, against Tupi announced for Texas. And then Game 2, an 8:05 first pitch on Yes. Garrett Cole, 13-7, a 3.5 ERA. Against John Gray, 7-7, a 3.93 ERA. And then the regular season finale on Wednesday at 4:05 on Yes. Domingo Germán will get the nod, 2-4, a 3.31 ERA. Against former Yankee farmhand Glenn Otto, 6-10, a 4.72 ERA. Otto's actually had some really good games down the stretch, so that will be an interesting matchup there. Tough spot for the Yankees. Obviously, they really don't have anything to play for here besides morale and hopefully Judge getting to 62.
Yeah, that's why I don't really think they'll win that many of these games.
I'm going to go split 2-2, I think, in the series. Texas is an interesting team. They play teams tough in spots, but sometimes not. So I think they'll get the split. I think 2-2 in the series.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Yeah.
Split.
So that will wrap up Concrete Jungle. To be fair, it's even the regular season finale, I guess, technically for us, in a weird way. When we talk to everybody on Thursday, it will be postseason preview time, at least for the Mets. Yankees obviously will be waiting until Monday, but we'll obviously recap and look ahead, and can't wait for that to get done. Should be an interesting week. Any plague plans, I guess, middle of the week this week for anybody, or low-key?
Yeah, pretty low-key.
Nate, I know we need to get our golf game back on track, Nate. It's been a rough couple weeks here for us.
I think I unlocked something towards the end of my round on Saturday. I'm starting to figure some stuff out. So, but the first half of the round, wasn't too good. But starting to figure a little bit out towards the end. So maybe Wednesday will be better.
Excellent. We need you to put the team on the back because I suck.
Get in the backpack, Paul.
Thank you, Dad. All right, so that takes care of Concrete Jungle for today. You can watch us live on YouTube like right now, or catch up anytime like you might be anyway right now at this point in the podcast. Also, to catch us on Anchor, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms. Nate Sharman producing as always for Kyle Evans, Paul Russo. Enjoy the week, everybody. We'll talk Thursday.